Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So ChatGPT is a generative AI, and it was founded in November of 2022, and they've had quite a few releases since then. And today I want to talk a little bit about ChatGPT and talk about a self-hosted chatbot. So here we're looking at the page for Llama.com. And if I click on models here, there are quite a number of models. The significant difference between the Llama models and the ChatGPT models is the Llama models are open source. And of course, at the top is the first one you always hear about, and that is DeepSeek R1, which is the Chinese model that was distilled. And it is comes in various model sizes of 1.5 billion, 7 billion, 8 billion, 14 billion, 32 billion, 70 billion, and all the way up to 671 billion parameters. So according to the number of parameters that your model has, that indicates the amount of compute power that you have to have behind it in order to run that particular model. And the reason that this is significant is because if we're going to self-host a chatbot with an AI model, we are going to have to run it on a computer. But the good part about running your own chatbot is the fact that it is completely private and private to you because you download the models. Llama stands for Omni-Layer Learning Language Acquisition Model, and as I mentioned earlier, all of these are open source models. And one of the distinguishing features of Llama is its ability to run your LLMs or your large language models locally, and we're going to use a front end called Open Web UI with Llama as the back end to achieve this result. I'm going to be self-hosting my chatbot on my desktop, which is a new Minis Forum UM890 Pro that I bought here a couple of months ago. And I have 64 gigs of memory on it. And I will tell you that more memory is better when you're running a self-hosted chatbot. That being said, by the same logic, it's usually great to have a really powerful NVIDIA-based video card where you can allocate the CUDA cores to it in order to do the AI chatbot functions. That being said, that is not what I'm doing, but instead, if we scroll down the page, on the Minis Forum page, you can see that the UM890 Pro is powered by the latest generation of AMD AI processors. And that happens to be a Ryzen 9 8945HS processor. That being said, most mini PCs will have what is called an APU, and an APU is usually an integration between an onboard graphics along with some other onboard peripherals as well as the CPU. This generation of system has what they're referred to as an NPU, which stands for Neural Processing Unit, and it's a system which is specifically designed to run AI workloads. I won't say that you can't host this application on a smaller computer, but I will tell you that according to the model size, that is the number of parameters that you choose in your AI model, along with the amount of CPU power you have, your mileage may vary and your experience may differ. Here we are at a terminal on that Minis Forum desktop, and I'm going to start by creating an Incus container. The Incus container I'm creating is for Ubuntu 2404. I'm calling the container WebAI. I'm including the default profile in the bridge profile, and by including the bridge profile, we're creating that container with an IP address on the main LAN, And the default profile includes the information on where the storage pool data should come from, and it comes from the default storage pool by coincidence. And then we have boot.autostart equals to true, which means that any time this system boots, it will start this container automatically. And then finally, we have security.nesting equal to true, which basically says that we're allowed to nest other types of containers inside of our Incus container. Let's start out by opening a shell to the root account with an Incus shell web AI. And then the very first thing you should do when you create any new container is you should perform an apt update to make sure that all of the repositories are up to date. I'm going to add myself a user account with an add user Scott because it's always a good thing to have a user account for your application. And after that, I'm going to go ahead and install some dependencies, and those dependencies are going to be curl OpenSSH server, so we can SSH to this instance later on, the nano editor, net-tools. And then we'll go ahead and do a -y and hit enter, and that will go ahead and install those things. Our Open Web UI as well as our Llama backend are both Docker applications, and so we're going to do a curl to install the Docker application from the Docker website with this script. Now that Docker is installed, let's go ahead and put Scott in the sudo group for administrative purposes, and also so that we do not have to provide a sudo command when executing Docker commands, we'll put Scott in the Docker group as well. Let's su over to the Scott account with an su-scott, and that will move over to the Scott account and also into the Scott home folder. Let's do a makedir on OpenAI, which will be a folder for our application, and let's cd into OpenAI. Next, let's do a nano on compose.yml, and let's go ahead and paste in our container information in our Docker Compose file. So first of all, we have two containers. One is called Open Web UI, which is the front-end user interface that you see through your web browser. The second thing we have is the Llama backend, and the Llama backend provides us access to downloading and running the models. And then we have restart unless stopped for both of these containers. And then we have the container name Open Web UI, and the Open Web UI depends on the Llama container in order to be running correctly. We have two persistent volumes. The first one is called config, and it is for the application configuration. And the second one is the data persistent volume folder, and that stores the database information for the program. Next, we have port 8080, which is the port that this application uses, but I'm exposing it to port 80 simply because since we have a dedicated Incus container, we can pick whatever port we want, and it seems like 80 might be a good choice. And so we have the environment, which is Llama base, and that points to the Llama container at port number 11,434 for the required interface for Web UI to talk to Llama. The Llama image is here, the container name, and then the ports 11,434. And we have one more persistent volume, and that is .models, and that's where the models will get downloaded to. So we don't have to make any changes to this. Let's just go ahead and do a Control-O and Enter to write that file out, and a Control-X to exit the nano editor. Now, if we go ahead and do an ls, you'll notice the only file we have is compose.yml. We'll go ahead and start the application with the Docker space compose space up -d, which will go ahead and download all of the container overlays for both OpenWebUI and Llama. And after it finishes downloading the overlays, it will then start the application. Now that the application is started, we can do a Docker PS, and we'll see that we both have the web UI as well as the Llama containers, and they are still in the starting mode, and so they're not completely started yet. But if we do an ls, we'll notice that we now have the config, the data, and the models folders. One of the first things we want to do is we want to do a sudo chmod, and we want to go ahead and say make that recursive and change the models folder for write access for the user, the group, and other people on the system. So I'll go ahead and do that, enter my sudo password, and that's done. I can do a Docker PS now, and it says that it's been up about a minute and it is up and healthy. Since we use the bridge profile to create the container, we now want to do an if config to find out what our address is on the main LAN. And here we can see that ETH0 has an address of 172.16.1.119. Heading up to my web browser here, if I go to 172.16.1.119 and I hit enter, you'll be met with this initial page. We want to go ahead and click on Get Started, and it's going to ask for your name. So I'll go ahead and type in Scott here. It's going to ask for your email address, which serves as your username. So I'm putting in vmsman@gmail.com, and then it asks for a password, and I'm going ahead and typing in a password down here. Once you do that, let's see if I got that password correct. There we go. And I'll go ahead and say create the admin account. At this point, you're met with this page, and it says you are running WebUI version 0.5.7, and as of this video, that was created back on January 23rd. So this is pretty continuously updated. It gives you a little information about the release notes. I click OK, let's go. This interface looks a little bit like ChatGPT, and particularly so if I open this hamburger menu on the left-hand side. But before we can actually use it, we have to go ahead and click on Select a Model. And then down here where it says Search a Model, we're going to type in a model name, and you're going to find model names over on llama.com that we looked at previously. So I typed in Llama 3.2, and Llama 3.2 is, I believe, a 7 billion data point model. So I'll go ahead and click pull 3.2, and it says it's downloading, and you can see it adding up over here. And when it gets to 100%, it will go ahead and verify that model, and it should, if we're lucky, finish by verifying that. So it says verifying it, and it says it has been successfully downloaded. So now I can click on the model, which is this model that we just loaded in, and I can say set as default. So now we have that as our default model, and actually our only model. To see exactly how many parameters the Llama 3.2 model has, I can go back to the Llama main page here, and it says Llama 3.2, and we're using the one that does not have a tag on it, and that is giving us 3 billion data points. So if we go back over here and we say something like, what are the specifications of a Boeing 787 aircraft. And we'll see how long it takes to respond to that. And here it is coming back actually relatively quickly, and it gives us our information. You notice it's not printing back quite as quickly. It would be faster if we had a really powerful video card and we were devoting the CUDA cores of that video card to drive our AI model. That being said, I think the performance of this is actually pretty decent. So now that it's printed that out, let's go ahead and go back to the Llama page here, and let's specifically click on the DeepSeek model. And in the DeepSeek model here, if we look, we can see that the 7 billion model has a tag of DeepSeek-R1. And you don't have to have the Llama run. That's what you would use if we had a command line interface. But since we have the web UI, we're not needing to do that. So let's find out how fast it is if we're running a 7 billion parameter model. So now I go ahead and click on New Chat, and then I'm going to click on this model down here and say Search for a model. I'm going to go ahead and put in DeepSeek R1 and click on Pull DeepSeek R1 from Llama, and now it's pulling that model. Now that it's done with the pull, if I go ahead and click on this page, you can see that it's still running Llama 3.2. But if I click on this drop-down menu and I choose DeepSeek R1, which is the 7.6 billion parameter model, it will go ahead and update the prompt here. And so I'll again ask, what are the specifications of a Boeing 787 aircraft? And this time, since it's a 7.8 billion parameter model, it's going to take a lot longer than that 1.5 billion parameter model in order to come with the resulting information. And my guess is it might take as long as a minute to formulate the response here. And you can see part of the DeepSeek model is it will print out the word thinking while it's trying to generate the answer. Now, after about 2.5 minutes, it's finally starting to print out the results, and that's because the DeepSeek R1 7 billion parameter model takes a lot more CPU in order to run. However, we're getting some more detailed information because this particular model with the larger number of parameters also produces higher quality results. Let's go ahead and head back over to the Llama page, and here I've searched for a model called Zima Blue AI, and it says mini CPM-0-2_6, and it says this is a GPT 4.0 Model M LLM for vision, speech, and multimodal live streaming on your phone. And so I've been trying this one out, and I really like the way that it works. So I'll go down here and say search a model, and I'll go ahead and type that model in and click pull that model. And it started to pull that particular model. Now this model's kind of interesting because it has almost 8 billion parameters, but it's optimized in a little bit different way. And so it turns out to be faster than the DeepSeek model that we just tried out. Now that it's finished pulling that Zima Blue AI model, I'll go ahead and click to start a new chat. And I'll go down here and I will choose that particular model, which I'm not seeing it here, so apparently it did not complete correctly. And you'll find out that sometimes you download a model and for whatever reason, it won't process in and be in here completely. This Arena model, by the way, is just a built-in chatbot. It says, submit your questions to anonymous AI chatbots and vote on the best response. So this Llama backend that is on this web chat AI is really fantastic. I encourage you to go out here and look at the different models that you can find over on Llama.com and try out the different sizes according to the power of CPU that you have. I do not personally own a high-end video card, a high-end NVIDIA video card with lots of CUDA cores. The only NVIDIA card that I had was an older card, and it did not support AI functions on it because its CUDA core version was too old. If you are concerned about your privacy, then running your own self-hosted chatbot where you retain all of the data and you know it's not shared with anyone else might be something you really like. It kind of depends completely on what your available hardware is and how powerful it is according to which model that you want to use. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit your notification bell, and we'll see you next time.